The Sanders event, Ryan, was in this context, you said, of the sort of plateau, and I think that the one kind of consistent polling story we've seen over the last 3 months is that Elizabeth Warren has gained across polling. That the challenge for the Sanders campaign, and I thought it was interesting them doing the event where they did it with the numbers they did, is that his challenge is just building out from the core they have. They obviously have a core of supporters extremely devoted, but I thought the last part of riff of his speech was about fighting for people that don't look like you, and like seemed to me a rhetorical leaning into the idea of addition to the coalition in a way I hadn't quite heard him make the case before.
I mean, that's kind of been their kind of underlying case the entire time. And the good news for Sanders is that you can't survey his strategy. In other words, pollsters look for likely voters. And the way that they look for likely voters is, what's the electorate looked like in the past and what are our projections about what it's likely to look this time? Whereas Sanders is trying to change the complexion and the face of the electorate. So he's trying to organize enough people and inspire enough people in Iowa particularly, to come out and caucus for Bernie Sanders. He's running up against this huge problem, though, that I mentioned earlier, of this media blackout. In the Democratic primary, this network and the New York Times have an enormous amount of influence. And this show in particular is an exception. It covers Sanders pretty regularly, but outside of that, he often either gets ignored or kind of laughed at as not a serious candidate, even when polls come out showing him, in reasonable contention.
Yeah.
And